Where does ego help a leader and when it does actually destroy them?
I haven't seen places where I think ego really helps. It's not always as dramatic as destroying them, but it's often it sabotages them bringing their best person forward.
When you're going through so many things in the business and your personal life, you need some kind of support in that. And leaders don't look for that. They only look for their righteous. I'm right. I'm doing everything what I want.
When people hit burnout, what do you see 6 months before that? What do you see in the lead up to that? That is a prediction of burnout. And the main thing I see is that determination to keep performing on your own, no matter what. Never acknowledge that you're struggling, but just keep delivering results, and only looking at results, not at yourself, your inner world.
These days, that a lot of a company just creating a survey and then getting it done and then saying, it comes to same managers, they're actually afraid to talk to. So people don't actually genuinely fill it properly because it just becomes like a tick box exercise.
People leaving the company because the manager doesn't really manage them well. Part of the manager's job is to create a psychologically safe team where we can speak up.
Obviously, I've seen leaders talk a lot about building great teams, but most of them actually secretly want them to agree with them.
Disagreement and challenge is a really important part of a great team. You need to be able to have really clean fights about what's the best thing to do. If the leader isn't willing to hold the space for that, they'll never have a great team.
Janet, you have been coaching leaders since 1995. When I read all, I couldn't believe it, right?
Yeah. See all the grey hairs.
All the grey hair. I only came to coaching in about 2019 or 2018 or something like that. But you've been coaching since 95. Oh, wow. What an experience, right? But what made you choose this work? And what do you think where coaching is now and then back then?
So I didn't choose it. It kind of chose me. So, many years ago, I was an accountant. I was a chartered accountant. And then I was spotted by my employers and sent to their training college as a trainer for other accountants. And so that was really where life began, teaching. And then I very quickly decided I wanted to open my own business. And that was partly due to a personal circumstance at a time in my life when things were very tough. And I thought, why has no one at Coopers & Lybrand ever sent me on a training that taught me anything this valuable? And someone should be doing this in business. And so I had the vision back then to set up a training and coaching company. And it was from then and learning by a lot of mistakes that I created the business. And back then we used to call it not more advising or mentoring or consulting, not so much coaching. And then, but essentially we were becoming coaches. And then eventually people began to realize how valuable it could be. And then I started to look at the whole discipline of coaching, which is very different to training or mentoring. Yeah. So that's really the story of how I came to it from an accountant. That's
good. Great story. How do you see now where it is now and where it was back then, 1995?
Well, it's a little better regulated. People understand more what it's about. There's quite a lot of confusion between executive coaching, life coaching. So some confusion in that, but there's a lot more qualification and a little bit more rigor in the industry. And I think most people go by recommendation. So it's like they get told someone is good and they go, oh, that's great. Because I think a lot of people have also wasted money on someone supposedly coaching them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So roughly in 30 years, how many leaders you have coached privately then?
I tried to add that up for this interview, and I think it's, it's probably more than 70. It's
Hmm.
probably up towards 100. I came to the conclusion it must be between 70 and 100. We're always older than we think we are.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
And
this
that's
happened sooner than I expected. And I look back and it's like, well, over that many years, it's got to be 100. It's got to be. Yeah.
that's true. That's
So,
true. And what is the
mm.
one thing that surprised you mostly?
Oh, what surprised me mostly was how many people I've been asked to coach by their employer and they don't want it. And they pretend they do, they pretend they're up for it. But actually, they're not really up for changing anything about the way they do what they do. And so you have to tell the employer, you're wasting your money. This isn't worth doing until they are really wanting some input, some help, and to change something about the way they do things. I found that very surprising.
Mm,
And I found it less recently. So I think maybe young people are maybe a little more open to the idea that they need to change something about themselves if they want different outcomes. But
mm.
certainly when I was first doing it, there were a lot of people that were very sure of themselves, very convinced they were right about everything, and very defensive when you attempted
Yeah.
to make any input.
Yeah, I think this is again. I've realized some few as well, right? That because maybe they think that, oh, because I've been put through a coaching process, so it's like a coaching
Mm-hmm.
from a HR point of view or a manager. Their manager said they think there's something wrong in them, and then there's they keep thinking there's something wrong in me. That's why they're asking me to do something, and then this is why they don't realize what coaching actually is. They see this as, like you said earlier, like mentoring or teaching. This is someone's going to tell them what to do. So I think this is where, like, I think I agree with you. Nowadays, is this narrative is shifting a little bit, and then people actually realizing what coaching is, and especially the leaders, they need it now. Now, like in AI world, now they definitely need someone to talk to.
Yeah, and it's like no top sportsman would think of trying to achieve great things without having a coach. But for some reason, great leaders have been trained to think that they shouldn't need a coach, that they should be able to do it all on their own. And I think the HR world has been a little bit guilty of feeding that idea that if they want you to have a coach, it's remedial. It's because you're doing something they don't like or don't want you doing it that way, and therefore they want to fix something about you. And I think that particularly happens when people go through 360-degree feedback and things pop out that need fixing. And someone says, I know, we'll give them a coach.
Yeah, true,
So,
true, true.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it's not surprising people get defensive.
and Janet, you mentioned regarding your tough time. I think you said earlier
Yes.
that you went through a tough time, and how did you manage to do that when you were going through?
Well, I didn't coach when I went through
Mm,
that tough time.
mm,
So that was very early on in my life.
mm,
And I lost my mum. I was pregnant with twins. I lost the twins. I then lost my job. And I was in total despair. And I was a very, very good girl. I worked very hard. I was good to people. I was very generous, very giving. And it was like I realized, I thought that God owed me a reward, which was to have everything I wanted the way I wanted it. And I didn't cope well with all those losses. And that was when I underwent some personal training and thought, this is completely mind opening. And why has no one ever shown me things about, what was my part in losing my job? You know, I was
mm,
very self righteous. I was exactly like these leaders I'm describing, very successful and very self righteous, thought I knew everything and my bosses were all stupid. And, I was very, very full of myself. And it took someone to show me how that had created some of the things in my life that weren't working. And that was so helpful. And from that, I built the business. From that low point, I built the business. But then you might also be talking about, I've also been through some tough times,
Yeah.
more recently. Yeah.
Yeah. I read
So
read
I've
that on
gone
your
through,
LinkedIn. You've gone through cancer as
yeah,
well. So
yeah,
well
for
done on beating that.
15 years
Yeah.
on and
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
And actually, all the work I've done in coaching and on myself really helped me. I didn't find it, it didn't pull me down at all. Even when, things were really tough, I was fine with it. I coped with it. And it was only actually after 15 years when I suddenly went, I'm not waiting on any outcomes, on any test results. I've got no surgery down the road. And I realized suddenly my vision opened right up because I could see far ahead, even at this ripe old age, whereas I realized my vision had been the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and no long term vision at all. But everything I had helped my clients to work with, I could use on myself. And it really helped me through that whole process.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well done on that. I know how hard it. Obviously, I can't understand because Touchwood never went through it. But the loss as well, I went through the similar thing as well, where coaching helped me in that as well in that period. That I had someone to talk to, and someone to, they can ignite some light in my head to say yes, think about this as well. So it definitely helped me and as a leader as well. Like, when you're going through so many things in the business and your personal life, you need some kind of support in that. And leaders don't look for that these days. Like you said, they only look for their righteous. I'm right. I'm doing everything what I want. This is the right way to do about it. So what message you want to give to those leaders who don't look for support?
Oh, that there was a question that someone asked me once about, when people hit burnout, what do you see 6 months before that? What do you see in the lead up to that? That is a prediction of burnout. And the main thing I see is that determination to keep performing on your own, no matter what. Never acknowledge that you're struggling, but just keep delivering results, and only looking at results, not at yourself, your inner world, refusing to look at any of that. For me, that is a red flag for trouble down the line. So that's what I'd say to them.
Yeah. Watch out, leaders. So
Yeah, absolutely.
what does a leader, at the top of, you coached really top leaders as well, like Unilever in India, big, and different countries as well, right? What they look like behind closed doors compared to how they actually present themselves in boardrooms or on the stage or on town halls.
The very best ones look exactly the same. The very best ones, yes, they're confident, but yes, they're willing to be vulnerable. Yes, they're willing to think about something more than themselves. They're extraordinary people with big visions for the world and for their business, and they're not just egocentric. So that's the very best ones. Top leaders, I don't think I've ever had the privilege to coach any of the top leaders that were bad. I've coached middle leaders that are bad, but the top ones won't let you near them. But I suspect they're very defended, very defended. But the ones I've had the privilege of working with have been open, vulnerable, human, real. And you may see a little bit more swagger when you see them on the stage or out in the world, but not much. They're very much the same people.
And when they are under pressure, what do you think? Well, in your experience, you have coached like around 100 leaders around the countries. So, what is the most common thing that breaks them? The one pattern that that keeps repeating themselves.
Anxiety, the tendency to think, if I don't achieve that, then I'm a failure. If I don't manage to overcome that problem, then it proves I'm stupid, like my dad always said, or some kind of repeated thinking pattern, negative thinking pattern that drives their anxiety and has them fear for their own real existence as they see themselves. So that the whole world thinks they're a success. In their mind, they're a failure, and they have to keep doing things to prove that they're not a failure. And there's a large anxiety around that. And the more anxious they get, the more the results aren't quite what they're hoping for, or the higher the anxiety gets. And when the anxiety is really high, they don't show it on the outside. They're sometimes a bit more snappy with people, but mostly it affects their judgment. They make really bad judgment calls because there's a part of their mind that's just saying, you have to do this, you have to do this. And when you're desperate, you do stupid things. If you're desperate to fill a position, you hire the wrong person, you make bad judgment calls.
If you see the leaders, I mean, there's now there's a different pressure as well nowadays, right? And
Yeah.
what we see here and all over the world. In your experience, did you notice a little bit of difference between coaching someone from, say, UK or Europe and someone from, say, India or Middle Eastern countries?
Every country has its own slight twist. So a couple of the countries that I found difficult to coach people were France and Korea, where in France, there's a kind of an intellectual demand to prove the background and the authenticity of every single thing you recommend. Where was that written, and where was that? And in Korea, it's impossible, no matter how close you get to people, to give them direct feedback. The saving of face is so important that it's like, if I thought your beard was ugly, I couldn't say to you, I think that beard is a problem. I think you need to do something with it. I would have to say, I know a man who has a beard very much like that one. And I had to say to him the other day that I didn't think his beard helped him in his career. And, you have to be indirect. So every country is different. And I think what's most important is that you go into any new culture open and ready to learn from your experiences with people, what they value and how to work with them. So I think that's the most important thing, to remember your ways aren't necessarily the right ways.
Yeah, definitely. And there is a saying, isn't it, that people don't leave companies, they leave the managers. And even work culture, whatever culture they are in, right? And in your experience, do you agree with this statement?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that any manager who has just 3 people reporting to them has to recognize that their most important job is to bring out the best in those 3 people. And that's their single most important priority. And if their own need for to feel secure or to feel better than other people gets in the way of that, then they're not being a leader. They're not being a good leader or a good manager. So yes, I absolutely think that if you don't have people feeling valued and part of something that's bigger and more important than just getting their paycheck, then yes, you will lose people. And that's a wasteful activity to rehire. And yeah.
If we go onto the leader's shoes, right, it's a very lonely place. It's very, very lonely place, right? And because they don't talk about it, then they think it
They
must be
don't feel
real.
safe.
Yeah, they don't feel
Yeah,
safe.
they don't feel safe. They don't feel safe talking about their struggles. And so, who can they talk to? Maybe their partner who's bored by their stories of work, but not just they don't feel safe talking about their struggles, but many people around them want something. They want something from them. They want them to help them get promotion if they're people from the company, or if they're people from other walks of life. They want exchanges of favors, or, it's like, so it's very lonely. You don't know who really wants to be your friend and who's telling you the truth because they care about you, and who's telling you something to manipulate you. Yeah. So that's a very lonely place.
Yeah, this is where when I looked at your website, is you talk a lot about psychological safety in the organization. They don't feel safe. They don't. I think psychological safety again is it become a kind of a buzzword these days, that a lot of a company just creating a survey and then getting it done and then saying, oh, okay, it comes to the same managers, they're actually afraid to talk to, so people don't actually genuinely actually fill it properly, because it just becomes like a tick box exercise.
Yeah. Well, it relates back to the question about, people leaving the company because the manager doesn't doesn't really manage them well. Part of the manager's job is to create a psychologically safe team where we can speak up. I can bring my contribution. I'm not scared to say what I think because I think my colleagues are going to laugh at me, or I'm not scared to try something because it might fail and I'll, get into trouble and look stupid. That's so important that I feel I have a safe space to bring my value, bring my contribution. Otherwise, you have a whole team of people bringing 30, 40, 50% of what they could bring, and you need twice as big a team as you really need because nobody's bringing their all. Yeah, I think it's very, very important. And who makes the psychological space, the psychological safety for the top person? Well, they have to be able to make it for themselves. That's a lot of what we're coaching them to do, to make it safe, even if other people don't agree with you, that you know and trust and feel safe in your own decisions and your own choices.
And when Amy Edmondson created this,
Yeah.
is actually when she started it was all about trust and interpersonal relationship, right? So it was all about trust from with each other, interpersonal skill, rather than
Mm-hmm.
just a framework. It's more is actually,
Yes.
if you see that, it's actually based on the trust, and
Yes.
leaders I see needs to create the environment for that trust to be
Yes.
to
Yeah.
be built up, to be
Absolutely.
growing that way.
Well, what I was going to say, and when it comes to themselves, confidence is made up of the words with fidence, with trust. And for me to create a psychologically safe space for myself to operate in, I have to operate from values. If my decisions and actions are aligned with my values, I know I can trust myself. If I let myself down or I cheat myself in some way, I know that about myself, and it's hard then to feel confident to lead and make unpopular decisions. And it's very difficult to do if I have betrayed my own value system.
100%, 100%. And then they need to feel safe inside as well first, right? Yeah, yeah. No, good point, Janet. Good point. And you worked in Unilever as well, right, in India. How was that experience?
I loved it. I loved working in Unilever. And it was a project where they were failing to grow, and they know that in their business they need to grow. And when we went there and did some work, the senior executive there was extremely an admirable guy, very open, very willing to learn. Arun Adikiri, his name is, and he allowed us to lead a very exciting project there. And the first work that we did, we learned that all the management team were kind of from the same caste, the same social background, the same universities, but their customers are often, Unilever products are very day-to-day products. They sell Lifebuoy and Ariel and products like that, and so they were disconnected from their consumer base, and so the leadership took that message on board and did an 8-month long project which was all designed to get closer and to change that and create a much more diverse thinking around the way that they marketed their products, and that made some huge change in business and showed up on their stock price very dramatically. So it was a very, very successful project, and one that I was extremely proud to be one of the leaders of. There were three of us leading it, and I was one of the three leaders.
So moving on with more leaders, ego. Ego is a word that comes up a lot, around leaders, and it can destroy them or it can give them some energy as well. So where do you think, in your experience, coaching leaders, where does ego help a leader, and when it does actually destroy them as well?
I haven't seen places where I think ego really helps. It's not always as dramatic as destroying them, but it's often it sabotages them bringing their best person forward, because it brings forward someone who's trying to prove something to themselves or trying to prove something to others, and it doesn't bring forward their best self. I imagine it might serve some purpose if you're operating in a very cutthroat environment. So in a very aggressive environment where defensiveness means survival, I think ego could help you operate in a way that preserves your role. I imagine working in the White House at the moment, ego is very helpful, for
Yeah.
example. It's like it can protect you from the abuse of others at times, I think. But in that environment, that kind of environment, no one's really operating at their best anyway. So that's the only way that I could see ego serving somebody, protecting them from the abuse of others.
And even in that environment as well, like, most leaders say they want honest feedback, but they don't want to hear it, right? The honest feedback. So do you think how many can actually handle it?
I think if it's approached right, I think everyone can handle it. I think they do want to hear it. They just find it difficult to hear. And so it has to be said in a way that it cuts through the defensiveness. Often, what you need to explain to them is what might be possible if they didn't do it this way. And also it needs to be delivered in a way that is skillful. I worked on myself a lot, and I think I'm one of the least defensive people I know now. And even I have been in a situation where I've had to say to somebody, to a coach, hold it. That's 9 things you've told me. I can't handle any more right now. Save the others for later. It's like, So it's hard to receive critical feedback, particularly if it's feedback that your intention was good, but your action didn't align with that intention. That is really hard to hear. And so, we have to say it in a way that deals with the hurt feelings around it. And I mean, one of the times that a senior leader ran out of the room was actually a time, very tough leader. And his team were giving him acknowledgement, what they appreciated and liked about him. And that he couldn't take. He literally got up and left the room. It was really tough for him. Really tough. So that's quite interesting, that sometimes the feedback about what people appreciate about you is hard to hear as well.
Yeah. See, we humans are very complex, aren't we? So we can never see
We are.
what could happen. Yeah.
We
And
are.
yeah, on complexity as well. Like, have you ever seen, or have you ever like given a feedback or came across a leader while coaching to realize, he or she might not be fit for the leadership role at all? Have you ever come across something like this?
I've certainly, I had a couple of business partners, and we eventually parted ways over this one. So this was a big project we were doing. We won a prize for it, actually, an award for it, and it was a change project for a big organization. and I think I'll be in trouble if I say the name, so I'm not going to say the name. But we were working with the middle level managers and the people below them. And we were doing the kind of work that really empowered people to bring their best value and bring their thoughts and bring their ideas for improvements. And one of the the board members said, I want people frightened.
Oh,
I don't want them to feel safe in their roles.
wow.
I want them frightened. And my business partners and I were like, how can we ethically keep working with
Mm,
this company? They won't let us work with the board, which would have been the obvious thing to do to shift the attitude in those board members, but they wouldn't allow us. But but they're paying us tens of thousands of pounds to run this project, and it's producing some great results.
mm,
But it's leaving staff, middle managers, some amazing people, vulnerable to being um, kind of aggressively attacked to make them more frightened and run harder. And that was the beginning of a kind of split. And it was very difficult because we had a very nice money making machine running, doing these big change projects. And I said, I'm not willing to do it anymore if we don't work with the top team.
mm.
So no more projects where we don't work with the top team. If they won't let us work with the top team, I don't want to do the projects. And I understood their perspective that we had this money making machine running
Yeah,
and a number
yeah,
of people whose incomes depended on it, staff that we were putting into
yep,
those projects.
yes.
But that ended up in a split, which was when I created the connections business. I split away from that company and set up my own business that worked only with leaders, and that was fine. And then we were it was an amicable divorce, but
Mm.
we went our own ways. In terms of have I ever found someone, I think I've had the company ask me to coach people, and I've had to say to the company, you save your money. This person isn't ready to be coached. They're not willing to hear that there's things that need to change. They're not willing to play ball. They're just going through the motions. Save your money. Don't spend your money on coaching them. So I've done that, certainly.
Mm.
Mm.
And what's the most common lie leaders tell themselves? I mean, not to you, but to themselves.
To themselves, that they know they're right.
Mm.
They know. So the lack of that humility to go, actually, I don't know. I can give it my best shot. I can give it my best judgment call, but I may be right and I may be wrong. I think that's the most common lie, is the absolute belief I'm right about it. And it's including me as a leader, that's probably my biggest failing, is remembering I don't always know.
I
Yeah.
think this is again, as a leader, you have to be vulnerable as well to say, yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
and show that in front of your teams and get more. This
Really
is how you
important.
build the trust as well. If you
Yes.
think you always know everything when you actually
Hmm.
don't know everything, so
Well, no
it's
one
really
does. No
no
one
one does
does.
exactly.
Yeah.
No one does it exactly. And then
Yeah.
obviously I've seen like leaders talk a lot about building great teams, right? But
Yes.
most of them actually secretly want them to agree with them, want the teams to
Yeah.
agree
They
with
want
them,
to
do
build
whatever,
great
say,
teams,
yeah, yeah,
think they're great. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's really important for them to realize that disagreement and challenge is a really important part of a great team. The ability to have positive conflict and really wrestle with things and argue with each other. That's why the psychological safety is so important. You need to be able to have really clean fights about what's the best thing to do. And that's what a great team is. So if the leader isn't willing to hold the space for that, they'll never have a great team.
And I've seen like, when a leader has been toxic, as well in the organization, bullying or
Yeah.
actually, like you said earlier, right? Example
Mm.
of a leader you were giving, they were actually
Yeah.
genuinely hurting the people around them.
Mm.
And do you think, can coaching actually fix it?
I think it can if they are willing to work with the coach, and their team needs to work with the coach and with them as well. I don't think they can fix it on their own. I think that you need for the team to start requiring something different from their leader, and they need a coach, a third party, to hold the safe space for them to do it, for them to say, Rohit, when you said that, I nearly kept my mouth shut and didn't challenge it, but I think you are totally wrong. It's like they need someone to help them speak out safely, but I don't think the leader can do it on their own.
Yeah, they need help.
Yeah,
But
and the longer they've had the team, 10,
mm,
12 years
mm,
of being, I mean, I remember there was a female leader that I worked with very early on in British Airways, BA, and her team described working for her as being systematically emasculated,
mm,
systematically emasculated.
wow.
And it's like when that's been your 10-year experience, to change that and change that dynamic, um, it requires the team to step up, not just the leader to step up to being open to doing things differently.
And this where the power comes in, right? So they think they have the power.
Yeah.
And but what does it actually do to leaders over time when they actually just think as I have a power and I can do what I want?
Well, it makes them less and less and less effective the more they
Mm,
believe that power is the only power that exists, and the less they acknowledge that they have some positional power. It's a bit like, white people not acknowledging white privilege. It's like you've got to acknowledge that power exists. That if I'm your boss, there is a power imbalance. That means that it's easier for me to say to you, I'm critical of this, than it is for you to say to me, I'm critical of this. I've
mm,
got to learn and acknowledge that power dynamic exists. But positional power is only one source of power. And those leaders think it's everything.
mm.
And the problem is they don't acknowledge the other sources of power, and over time they just get less and less effective, and the results will show that.
So we show that definitely.
Mhm.
And I was thinking like all the new things coming up, right, with AI, hybrid work, and all the
Mm-hmm.
pressure from all
Yes.
over you know, the leaders are rightly in at the moment, right? Like we discussed,
Yeah.
leaders they need help, and the pressure is a lonely space.
Yeah.
What do you think is the single biggest gap between what companies are training their leaders to do and what actually they need?
So they're still not doing enough to train the leaders to look inside. They
Mm,
still think it's all about what are they doing outside,
mm,
what decisions are they making. And, with AI, often what is most needed is not can we do this, it's should we do it? Because with AI, you can do just about anything. But the question
mm,
becomes should we? So the moral compass is something that AI cannot really replicate. We need leaders who can do that. So
mm,
that's with AI. And with some of the other pressures like working from home and flexible working, I'm reminded of the fact there was a time when if you were a boss, you had clerks sitting at desks in a room and you'd crack a whip and they couldn't leave their desk, and they worked all day, and what you or out in the fields, and what you controlled was their time and their presence. And if you controlled that, you pretty much got their best efforts. But now it's not good enough that someone's sitting at their desk. What we need from them is the best parts of themselves, because if they don't find an opportunity to bring that in their work, they'll take it elsewhere. They'll take it to their favorite charity or their favorite. Um, they'll take that best part of them somewhere else. So the good leaders need to bring that sense of motivation, so that whether you're on your couch at home with your laptop or sitting at your desk, you are bringing the best part of yourself because you want to. And good leaders need to look inside to find out how they go about that. How do they bring the best out of everyone in their team, whether they're remote working, whether they're in the office, whether they're, whether they're, yeah.
Yeah, and I've come across my own experience as well. There are a lot of leaders who are very, you know, toxic as well. Even nowadays, it's like you mentioned in the old days, set up the time, and they actually still. I mean, nowadays most workplaces are very flexible, which is great, right? People have that kind of mental clarity or mental kind of, if you see that. That there's a space to say, yeah, if I'm going for my doctor's appointment, it's fine. I can do the work extra, or I can do something else. But there are some leaders still there who are actually very, very toxic in that. Say, okay, what makes you go out that time? How long it will take? I mean, those are actually, I don't call them leaders. They are not even leaders.
They're driven to try and
Yeah.
supervise really closely instead of trusting themselves to motivate you, so that there's an outcome that you want to get done. And if you take an hour off to go to the doctor, you'll do 2 hours later. It's like that's a whole different way of managing people than trying to control and supervise your every step. And there's no place for that in today's world. Those toxic leaders, they're just gonna become dinosaurs and not have jobs at some point.
And to be honest, I've heard them. I've been very lucky to work with great leaders, actually. And now I'm seeing like most companies are very, very good in that. They look after their people. They look after, the mental health of the people as well. So, which is great to
Yes.
hear. The young leaders are coming in, right? They're very, very good. And talking about the young leaders, right? If
Yes.
new person like coming out of uni, or someone, right, graduate, or in the early careers, if a young person watching this and wants to be a great leader one day, what is the one thing they should start working on right now?
Themselves. How can you be the best version of yourself? Is it about your health? Is it about how you present yourself? Is it how you relate to people? What is it about you that is working, and what is it about you that sabotages your own success? That's the single most important thing for them to be working on.
Great. And before I let you go, Janet, I want to ask you now, what coaching has taught you about yourself?
Oh, what's coaching taught me about myself? It's taught me about, I guess, neuroplasticity. The way we think can change. We can change it. We can change it. If we're scared of heights, we can change that. It's changeable. If we hate working with people that remind us of our bullying grandfather, we can change that. Everything about the way we think and the way we approach things can be changed.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much, Janet, for coming on to this show, Rohit Gautam show, and talk about sharing your experience actually, and talking about what actual leadership is all about. I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much for your wonderful wisdom.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, Rohit.
Me too. So guys, be a great leader. Like Janet said, work on yourself. And if you need any help, I'll put Janet's website in the description. Please contact her and find out about her, and then get her help as well. So guys, I'll be back soon with a new guest very soon. Till then, take care, stay safe, and bye for now.